After her father's funeral, a little girl was kicked out by stepmother, but the millionaire arrived. The sky was heavy that morning, painted in dull shades of gray, as if even the heavens mourned with the little girl. The churchyard was filled with the sound of umbrellas opening, of muffled sobs, of shuffling feet. A small coffin, draped in white lilies, rested at the front, and around it stood neighbors, distant relatives, and a few family friends. But for the little girl, all she could see was the wooden box that held her father, the man who had been her protector, her comfort, her whole world. She was so small, standing there in her black dress, holding tightly to a single white rose. Her fingers trembled as though the rose itself were too heavy to bear. Her eyes, swollen from nights of crying, scanned the crowd, searching for her father's familiar face, though she knew it would never appear again. She felt lost in a sea of tall figures, her voice too small to be heard, her grief too big for her tiny chest to hold. When the priest's voice rose to speak the final words, her stepmother stood a little apart from her, arms folded across her chest, her gaze distant, detached. There were no tears in her eyes, no soft hand to reach down and comfort the child. While the little girl's heart broke, the stepmother's face remained hard, as if this moment was nothing more than an inconvenience. The girl clutched her rose tighter, whispering words only her heart could hear. "Papa, I'll be brave. I'll do as you always said. I'll carry your love with me." Her voice cracked as she stepped forward, her tiny shoes sinking into the wet grass. With trembling hands, she placed the rose on top of the coffin. For a moment, the world stood still. The sound of rain softened. The wind seemed to hush. She closed her eyes and imagined her father's smile, the one that made her feel safe, the one that told her everything would be all right. But when she opened them again, reality crashed down like thunder. The coffin was lowered, the dirt began to fall, and with each thud against the wood, a piece of her heart seemed to crumble. She reached instinctively for her stepmother's hand, desperate for something steady to hold on to. But the woman pulled her hand away sharply, her lips pressed thin. It was a rejection that cut deeper than the loss itself. By the time the mourners had left, the girl remained by the grave, her small body shivering in the cold. The stepmother finally approached, her voice flat and cold. "It's time to go." There was no gentleness, no soft tone for a child who had just buried her father. Only impatience. The ride back to the house was silent. The girl pressed her forehead to the car window, watching raindrops race each other down the glass. Every corner of the city they passed felt unfamiliar now, as though the world itself had changed since her father's last breath. She hugged her teddy bear, the only piece of comfort left to her, so tightly it was as if she feared it too might disappear. When they arrived at the house, it no longer felt like home. The pictures of her father on the walls seemed to look down on her with kindness, but the warmth they once carried was gone. The laughter that used to fill the rooms was nothing but an echo in her memory. She stepped into her room and froze. Her clothes, her books, her little treasures, all were thrown into a bag. The sight struck her like a blow. The stepmother stood in the doorway, her arms crossed. Her words were sharp, final, and merciless. "Your father is gone. This is not your home anymore. Take your things and leave." The little girl's lips trembled. She wanted to cry out, to say, "But Papa promised I'd always have a home." She wanted to beg, to plead, to hold on to something, but no words came. Instead, she bent down, picked up her bag, and hugged her teddy closer. Her tears rolled silently down her cheeks, each one carving a path of grief and fear. She walked past the stepmother, out into the night, her small figure framed by the doorway as the house behind her went dark. No hand reached out to stop her. No voice called her back. The door shut, and with it, the last link to the only life she had known was severed. Outside, the street was quiet, the rain still falling gently. She stood alone, a fragile child in a vast and uncaring world. Yet deep inside her heart, her father's words lingered like a whisper, "Be brave, my angel." And so, with trembling, Steps. She carried herself forward into the unknown, her little soul already carrying a weight far heavier than any child should bear. The streets at night were not made for children, yet here she was, small, fragile, and alone, walking with her bag dragging against the cracked pavement. The world seemed bigger than ever, swallowing her up in its vastness. Streetlights hummed overhead, their flickering glow casting long shadows that stretched across the road. Every sound, the distant barking of a dog, the creak of an old sign, the rumble of a car, made her heart jump. She had never been without her father before. Every night he had tucked her in, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "You're safe, my angel." But tonight, the silence of his absence was louder than anything she had ever known. She clutched her teddy bear so tightly that its seams strained. Its fur, once soft and golden, was worn thin from years of love, but it was the last piece of comfort she had. With every step she whispered to it as though it could answer, "Don't worry, we'll be okay. Papa said so." Her voice was shaky, breaking with every word. The hunger began to gnaw at her belly. She hadn't eaten since morning, and the tears had stolen away her strength. She passed by the glowing windows of a small bakery, now closed for the night. The smell of bread lingered in the air, teasing her with warmth she couldn't reach. She pressed her face to the cold glass, imagining biting into a soft roll, her father's laughter at the breakfast table. But the door was locked, and reality was merciless. Her tiny legs grew weaker, and finally she sank down onto the stone steps outside the bakery. She pulled her knees close, hugging the teddy against her chest, as though wrapping herself in a blanket of memories. The night air was cold, the kind of cold that slipped under your skin and stayed there. She shivered, whispering again into the darkness, "Papa, I'm trying to be brave, but it's so hard." The world seemed to pause. In the silence, her father's words floated back to her, words he had spoken one night when thunder had scared her awake. She had run into his arms, trembling, and he had said, "If you ever feel lost, my angel, just pray. The world can be cruel, but God listens to pure hearts. Miracles find those who believe." So there, on those cold steps, she closed her eyes, her small hands folded, her lips trembling. She didn't know how to ask for much. She didn't pray for toys or riches, or even for the stepmother's heart to soften. Her voice came out soft, fragile, but clear enough for heaven to hear. "God, please don't let me be alone. Please, just send someone who will care." A tear slipped down her cheek, falling onto the teddy's worn fur. She held on to the hope that somewhere, somehow, her prayer might reach the sky. The hours dragged on. People passed by, some glancing at her, others pretending not to see. The city, so alive in the day, grew quiet in the night, and the child seemed like a shadow, unnoticed, forgotten. But even as she curled up against the bakery door, her body giving in to exhaustion, she whispered once more, "I know you're listening, Papa. I know you're close." The moon shifted across the sky, clouds parting to let its light fall gently on her small form. It was as if the universe itself had wrapped her in a faint glow, a reminder that she was not as invisible as she felt. She drifted into sleep, her breathing soft, her teddy tucked beneath her chin. Somewhere in the distance, the hum of an engine echoed faintly. A black car made its way down the street, its headlights sweeping over the pavement. The man inside, dressed in quiet elegance, was not looking for anything or anyone. He was a millionaire who often drove through the city at night, seeking perspective, reminding himself of the world beyond his walls of wealth. But tonight was different. Tonight, destiny was waiting on the steps of a closed bakery in the form of a little girl with tear-stained cheeks and a teddy clutched to her chest. He hadn't seen her yet. He hadn't stopped his car. But something unseen had already set the wheels in motion. And so she slept, unaware that the answer to her prayer was drawing closer with every passing second. The morning sun broke gently over the city, spilling gold across the streets. Its light touched the small figure curled up on the bakery steps, a teddy bear clutched tightly to her chest. She stirred, her body stiff from the cold stone beneath. Her eyes red from tears and a night of restless dreams. For a moment she forgot where she was. She turned, expecting to see her father's kind face, expecting to hear his soft voice calling her, "My angel." But the emptiness reminded her all over again. He was gone, and she was alone. At that very moment, a sleek black car rolled slowly down the quiet street. Inside sat a man whose life was far removed from the hardships of the world around him. He was a millionaire, successful beyond measure, yet his wealth had never built a wall around his heart. On mornings like these, he often drove through the less traveled roads, grounding himself, reminding himself that life was bigger than boardrooms and fortune. His eyes drifted casually from one storefront to the next until something caught him. At first he thought it was nothing more than a bundle of clothes left on a step. But as his car slowed, he saw her, the small child curled up, trembling, clutching a teddy bear as if it were her lifeline. He pulled the car to the side of the road and stepped out. The air was crisp, the sound of his shoes against the pavement echoing softly. As he approached, he saw her face, tear-streaked, pale, yet still holding the faint innocence of childhood. His chest tightened. This was not just a child who had wandered away. This was a child who had been left behind. He knelt down beside her, his voice gentle, careful not to frighten her. "Little one, are you all right?" Startled, the girl opened her eyes. She looked up, blinking against the sunlight, unsure whether the figure before her was real or just another dream. She hugged her teddy tighter, her voice barely a whisper. I don't have anywhere to go." The man's heart ached. "Where are your parents?" he asked softly. Her lips trembled as she answered. "My father, he's gone, and my stepmother. She said I don't belong." The words seemed to cost her strength, as though each syllable carried the weight of her sorrow. The man paused, struggling against the lump rising in his throat. In her eyes he saw more than pain. He saw the strength of a child trying to be brave when the world had given her nothing. He couldn't walk away. He wouldn't. Without hesitation, he removed his coat and draped it over her small shoulders. She sank into its warmth, her tiny fingers holding the fabric as though it were the first piece of comfort she had felt in days. He lifted her gently into his arms, her head resting against his chest. "You're safe now," he whispered, his voice steady and certain. "You're not alone anymore." As he carried her to the car, passers-by glanced but said nothing. Yet for the little girl, it felt as though the entire world had shifted. She no longer felt invisible. Someone had seen her, truly seen her, and reached out with kindness. Inside the car, she sat quietly, staring out the window as the city passed by. But this time, her reflection in the glass didn't look so small, so lost. She held her teddy, but now there was something new in her grip, a spark of hope. The man glanced at her from the driver's seat, a promise already forming in his heart. He didn't know her story in full, but he knew enough. She had been abandoned, yet she deserved love, safety, and a future brighter than the pain she had endured. He had the means to give it, but more importantly, he had the will. The car drove on, leaving behind the cold steps of the bakery, carrying forward the fragile beginnings of a new chapter. And though the girl's heart still ached for the father, she had lost deep inside. She felt the echo of his words. "Be brave, my angel." For the first time since the funeral, she believed she could be. Life had taken everything from the little girl in a single cruel stroke. Her father, her home, her sense of belonging. Yet in her darkest night, when the world seemed colder than she could bear, her whispered prayer was heard. From the depths of loss came an unexpected hand of kindness, proving that even when life closes one door, another opens with light. She had lost a father, but destiny had sent her a protector, a guide, and a promise of love. And in that moment, the little girl learned that hope can be found even in the most broken places, sometimes carried to us by the very people we least expect.